All right, let's peel back the layers on something maybe a bit more intricate than just horsepower or fancy infotainment systems in the auto world today.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Where you really dig into the financial blueprints and, the strategic chess moves of some of these global giants.
Yeah.
We'll focus mainly on European automotive, specifically Stellantis, and see how they stack up against, say, Tesla and BYD.
Sounds good. It's a fascinating comparison.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out the key insights from the sources you've given us. We're looking at everything, really. Executive pay, worker salaries, and the massive pressures shaping their big decisions, especially around that tricky, bumpy road to electric vehicles.
Yeah, the EV transition.
Get ready to see the industry through a bit of a different lens, I think.
And these aren't just like dry numbers in a report, believe me. Understanding how these companies pay their leaders, how they invest in their people, where the money actually goes. That's really the core of who wins and who, well, struggles in this race to redefine driving. The sources you shared, they give us a really unique peek into these different philosophies, different ways of running a company playing out right now.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the stuff that always grabs headlines, right? The paychecks for the top bosses.
Yeah, the big numbers.
When you look at these figures, you got to ask, how do they compare? And what does it actually tell us about what these companies value, or maybe how they're structured?
Well, the differences are pretty stark, actually, and they definitely hint at very different corporate cultures. If you look at Stellantis, the sources point to super managers like Carlos Tavares, Antonio Filosa.
Okay.
Their annual packages can get up to $24 million. That's like 24 million.
Wow.
And, it's important to remember that's not just salary. It's got big bonuses, long-term incentives baked in, supposedly tied to performance, hitting targets.
Right, performance linked. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, 24 million, how does that compare?
Well, contrast that with Tesla. Now, Elon Musk is obviously a special case, right? He's the main shareholder. His pay comes mostly through these huge stock plans.
Right, the mega grants.
Exactly. Tied to hitting really ambitious long-term goals. So his wealth is directly linked to the company's stock price. But if you look at the other C-level execs at Tesla, the non-owners,
Right.
they typically get much less, often, maybe under 10 million, say $6 to $10 million, especially if you don't count those like one-off massive stock options. It's just a fundamentally different setup than your traditional giant corporation.
Okay, completely different model. And BYD, a Chinese player.
Yeah, and then there's BYD. Over there, managers get paid way less. We're talking usually hundreds of thousands, maybe a few $1,000,000 a year.
Just a few million.
Yeah.
Compared to 24.
Yeah. The sources call it a Chinese model. It seems less focused on these massive individual executive bonuses and maybe more on broader workforce incentives or state goals. Just a very different vibe.
That is a huge gap.
Yeah.
$24 million at Stellantis versus, maybe a couple of million max at BYD. Really makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the impact of that kind of money at the top, especially in, like you said, an older European structure.
It does.
Is there a logic we're missing? Maybe it's about getting the absolute best talent or dealing with, I don't know, legacy issues. And how does this difference right at the top then trickle down to the people actually building the cars, the workers?
You've hit the nail on the head. That contrast with worker salaries is just as stark, maybe even more telling about these different models.
Okay.
So if you look at a Tesla worker, say, in the U.S., they might be earning somewhere between $50,000 and $65,000 a year. Some reports even suggest more once you add in bonuses and overtime.
50 to 65K.
Got it. Now, compare that to a Stellantis worker, maybe in Italy or France. Their annual pay often lands between €25,000 and €35,000.
25 to 25,000 euros.
Euros, yeah. So even when you try to account for cost of living differences, which are real, it's still noticeably lower than what the Tesla folks are making.
It's a significant difference.
It really is. So the big question is, what's the impact on competitiveness? All that money going to top managers at Stellantis, you could see it as a kind of cost of structure, right? Something that weighs the company down.
A cost of structure. What does that mean in practice? Like less flexibility?
Exactly. It could mean less money readily available for reinvestment in crucial areas, like R&D for the next big EV breakthrough. Or maybe it even subtly pushes up car prices because those costs have to be covered somewhere. It's not just bookkeeping. It potentially points to a strategic bottleneck. The sources suggest that if these huge payouts aren't matched by, winning results in technology on the factory floor in the market, then that capital might be getting diverted from where it's critically needed, like developing tech, hiring people, improving conditions for the existing workforce.
Right. Diverted from the future, almost.
Sort of, yeah. In contrast, you look at Tesla and BYD, setting aside Musk's unique situation again proportionally, they spend way less on management pay.
Okay.
And that frees up capital, money that can go straight into innovation, into their employees, speeding up tech development. This whole difference in pay philosophy for execs and workers, it really highlights these distinct ways of running a company, the relationship between the top brass and the factory floor.
Yeah, it sounds like more than just money. It's about culture, maybe morale.
Absolutely. Does that kind of pay gap create an us versus them feeling? How does that affect agility when you need to change direction fast, like with electrification? It could seriously impact the internal mood, worker motivation, even how attractive the brand feels, raises real questions about, long-term health.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. And quite unsettling, honestly. It paints this picture of companies running on totally different financial logics, maybe even different ideas about fairness internally. And this leads us right into their strategic choices, doesn't it? Especially around the huge challenge of going electric. Because, okay, maybe high pay demands amazing results, but it feels like the reality for European car makers like Stellantis is just messy.
Incredibly complex, yeah.
As we get into these decisions, especially on EVs, I have to say I feel a bit, I don't know, concerned, maybe disappointed about how Stellantis and perhaps other European players are handling it. What are these choices telling us about where they're headed?
You've nailed a key tension there. Like high pay, like Tavares gets over 23 million a year. It definitely creates this expectation that they'll avoid major strategic blunders.
Right. You pay that much, you expect perfection.
Kind of. But managers operate in incredibly turbulent markets. There are constant tech shifts, geopolitical curveballs, plus often conflicting demands from shareholders. It's genuinely tough.
Sure.
And the sources do say the pay system has performance links. Like in 2024, Tavares actually got fewer incentives than the year before because, quote, some objectives were not met.
Oh, yeah. So there's some accountability there.
There's an attempt, yes. It shows the system tries to reward results. But the sheer size of the numbers is still the focus of public debate, especially when you stack it up against the results and the massive challenges they face.
Okay. So what about those challenges and maybe missteps, particularly on EVs? Why is it proving so difficult?
Well, digging into Stellantis' EV transition, it's clear there isn't just one reason. It's a mix of things. A big one is often shareholder pressure.
Ah, the shareholders.
Yeah,
Always comes back to them, doesn't it?
often, yeah. Groups like Exor, a major shareholder, their main goal is often maximizing short-term value. They want quick returns, big dividends, share buybacks.
Money now.
Exactly. Even if that means less cash gets plowed back into long-term stuff like R&D for the next generation of cars. And managers, well, they often get those big paychecks partly by delivering on those short-term demands.
I see. So the incentives might be misaligned with long-term transformation.
Potentially, yeah. Then there's their actual EV strategy. Remember, Stellantis initially had this really aggressive strategy. They were going all in on electric for Europe by 2030.
I remember that announcement. It seemed bold.
It was bold. But then reality hit. EV sales slowed down, the cars are still expensive, charging infrastructure is patchy.
Yeah, still not great everywhere.
Right. So they reverted to a more gradual approach based on hybrids. Basically put that 2030 all-electric goal for Europe on hold. Market conditions forced them to backtrack.
Okay, so a strategy pivot. What else?
Their overall market vision seems different too. Unlike Tesla or the Chinese companies who are really focused on EVs, Stellantis is still making a lot of gasoline and hybrid engines.
Hedging their bets? Or just milking the old tech?
Maybe a bit of both. It could be a strategy to not force the transition too fast, keep serving markets that aren't ready for EVs, or, just squeeze value from existing factories and platforms. They have started making electric motors globally and developing new shared platforms like the STLA ones.
Ah, yes, the modular platforms. Supposed to be efficient.
Supposed to be, yes. They're designed to underpin lots of different future EVs, aiming for scale. But the sources say their development and deployment are slower compared to more dynamic competitors. They're moving, but maybe not fast enough.
Slower.
Huh?
It's not good in this race.
Not ideal, no. And then some expert analyses point fingers at leadership itself. They mention instances where managerial leadership may lack a clear vision and effectiveness in communication and strategy.
Ouch.
Yeah. Leading to what they call inadequate decisions and ultimately missed opportunities. pretty critical takes there.
So maybe not just external pressures, but internal issues too.
It seems like a mix. And finally, there's just the sheer difficulty of juggling the new with the old. You see it in their reorganizations, pulling back investments in places like Italy, not replacing some older models, a lack of fresh blood in some historic plants. It shows how hard it is to make this huge industrial shift while trying to keep the traditional side running and, protect jobs. And it's like trying to change the engine on a plane while it's flying. High stakes.
So when you put it all together, what's the takeaway? It's not just one simple mistake, is it?
Not at all.
It's this incredibly tangled web. Shareholder demands pushing for quick cash, the market doing unpredictable things, maybe some internal fumbles, the weight of their own history, and just the raw difficulty of this massive EV shift.
That sums it up pretty well. It's a complex interplay of all those things.
A really tough tightrope to walk. And it definitely raises some serious questions about the future, especially for Stellantis.
Exactly. And when you connect those dots, that very Western model of super high executive pay, the constant shareholder pressure for now, and the strategic choices that result, well, it paints a pretty concerning picture, I think.
How so?
Stellantis, with its history, its structure, its pay model, it just seems structurally at a disadvantage compared to leaner, maybe more focused players like Tesla or BYD. Honestly, looking at all these systemic things, I find myself pretty unconvinced about their future path if they don't make some more radical changes, and fast.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
Skeptical about their future.
A bit skeptical, yeah. Or at least concerned about the current trajectory. It's important to say, again, high pay might imply responsibility, but the global market, the speed of tech change, the financial pressures, they're brutal tests for any leader. The real question is whether the current model is actually built to pass those tests.
Right. And this isn't just like some internal corporate soap opera, is it? Why should you, listening right now, actually care about these boardroom decisions and pay scales?
That's the crucial link.
Because these insights, they're fundamental to understanding where the whole car industry is going.
Right.
The speed of innovation we'll see, and maybe even the wider economy. It affects jobs, national competitiveness, especially here in Europe.
Absolutely. It affects all of us, really. Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on.
Okay, lay it on us.
How do these deeply embedded corporate structures, these compensation models we've talked about, how do they really line up with the kind of long-term thinking and competitiveness needed for such a rapid, massive industrial change, particularly here in Europe?
Are they fit for purpose, basically?
That's the question. What's the real cost down the line of prioritizing these short-term gains over maybe a bolder, long-term vision in an industry that's so critical for the continent's economic future? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
A real balancing act with potentially huge consequences.
Indeed. So if you found this deep dive valuable, if it gave you some food for thought, please do consider giving us a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more of these in-depth explorations.